undesirable behaviours can stem just because a dog is trying to tell us something. They don't want to behave badly on purpose. There's no incentive for them to do that. They don't want to annoy us because actually we provide them everything they ever need. They want to please. Most dogs would absolutely do anything for you, and they don't want to annoy you. Welcome to the Tales of Success podcast, a show about Labradors and achieving training success. Thank you so much for joining us again for this episode. And this one is a little bit unscripted. It's probably going to turn into me rambling a little bit, so apologies in advance. The reason that I wanted to do this podcast was in the last couple of days, I've seen quite a lot of posts in a particular Facebook group, and there seems to be a lot of people really struggling with their puppy, nipping, chewing furniture, and generally being a puppy. And some of the responses that I've seen have been quite upsetting, really, about, what you should do to punish the dog, or even ways to prevent it from happening. And that's a struggle for me because dogs need to chew. They need to bite things. They need to explore their world. And I've spoken already about puppy nipping, biting and chewing in one of the other episodes. So if you are struggling, do check out that episode. But one of the solutions that people have come up with on this Facebook group is to place a muzzle onto their young puppy to stop them biting, to stop them chewing furniture, and to essentially stop them exploring the world with their mouth. That's troubling because muzzles are absolutely fine for certain situations. Some dogs need them on more than others. Some dogs need them at the vets. But as a standard day-to-day thing, all day, every day, your dog should not be wearing a muzzle for that amount of time. There's loads of different types of muzzles. If you need to wear one, consult your trainer or your behaviourist to find the right one for your dog. But the ones that I've been seeing are tight-fitting, and they essentially keep the dog's mouth closed. And that's tough because the dog can't chew, they can't lick, they can't open their mouth to yawn, they can't drink water, they can't pant. All of these things a dog needs to do to be healthy, happy, and a youngster needs to be putting things in their mouth. It very much is their way of finding out information, exploring their world. So really, I guess this is just a plea to not rely on a muzzle to solve your problem, because actually a problem exists for a reason. A muzzle might stop it in the short term, but long term, we're not addressing why your dog is doing all of these behaviours. So I just want to share a little bit about kind of what causes a dog to do certain things and what affects their behaviour that we see. Labradors very rarely behave badly just because they feel like it. It's not in their nature. They're pretty well-behaved, placid dogs. If they do things that you dislike, that is either because you're not quite used to living with a dog, or actually that the behaviour that they're showing you is driven by what they feel. So it's driven by their emotions. And dogs are very, very similar to humans in this sense. They have feelings, they've got emotions, and those feelings and emotions influence what they do. They influence when they do it and why they do it. Some days we have really good days as humans. Other days we become emotional, and it means that we go about things in a slightly different way. If you've got a Labrador, or in fact a dog of any breed, if they are acting in a way that you dislike, then we need to actually consider what reasons are behind that behaviour that they're giving. So why are they actually behaving in that certain way? And it's only once you really drill down on that and you understand why they are doing certain things, that's the point when you know how you can help them overcome it and essentially start to tweak and change that behaviour that they show. So we're not just talking about suppressing all that behaviour, we're talking about figuring out why they're doing it and finding ways to change it. So once you understand why they respond in certain ways, it means that you can then step up and you can help them. You can prevent it from happening again and again, and you can start to actually change that behaviour and show them a better way to do things. So if we look at any dog doing any behaviour, I'm going to take I'll take barking as an example, but it could be absolutely anything. So as humans, we don't like it when our dogs bark. It's a very natural thing for them, but it tends to be one of those things that I hear about most that is really frustrating people. Dogs don't just bark because they like the sound of their own voice. They are usually trying to communicate something with you. So I've got a little list of things which could influence a dog's behavior. And it's not going to be relevant in all cases, but these are some of the things that you could think about if your dog is doing something that you dislike. So they might be behaving badly or barking because of their physical health. It might actually be that they're in pain. It might be that they've got some underlying health condition or illness, which means that they're not feeling their self. It might be that they're really stressed. Dogs have a good threshold to stressful situations, but as humans, we throw our dogs into an awful lot of situations which can be worrying, scary, overwhelming, exciting, all of these things. And we just expect them to deal with it straight away from an early age. And we don't always give them that slow route into it, which they sometimes need. So they can become stressed quite quickly, and we don't always recognize those emotions. So if you've got a dog that's feeling a little bit stressed, chances are it's going to affect their behavior in some way, and they might start to show a bit more of that undesirable behavior. Next on my list, I've got the inability to regulate their own emotions. As humans, we have had years and years and years, depending on how old you are, of practicing how to cope with being happy, how to cope with being excited, how to cope with being sad or upset. And that in certain situations, you might just have to spend some time alone. You might want to surround yourself with other people. You might just want to take yourself off and do a bit of meditation or something to take your mind off it. But we've got these coping strategies which allow us to regulate our own emotions, so our emotions don't get the better of us. Dogs don't have that. Part of the reason is they don't have the independence that we have. They've not dealt with all of those life experiences that we've had, but also they're a lot younger. They don't have those years and years of experience that you might do of regulating their own emotions. And if we get a dog that's emotional in good or bad senses, excitable or scared, it will affect their behavior, and potentially we start to notice some undesirable behaviors. It could also be down to things like how used they are to different social interactions. So you might have a dog that's really beautifully behaved at home, but if you take them to a busier environment, you might see some crazy behavior, not because they're intentionally being naughty, just actually they can't cope with that. They're not used to having that level of social interaction, and it starts to affect that behavior that you see. In a very similar example, we could also look at the environment. Is the environment we're putting our dogs in suitable for them? Can they cope with it? And does it give them everything that they need? So if you have a dog that is, let's stick on the chewing example, as that's what I started talking about at the beginning. If you've got a dog that's chewing, it might be that they're chewing because they're stressed or they're bored. Just two examples. But if the household environment that they're in is not conducive to being nice and relaxed, then actually they feel stressed and they might want to chew as a way to help relieve some of that anxiety. If their needs are not being fulfilled, again, we might see that undesirable behavior popping out because they're potentially bored. Or there might be things in that environment, sounds or smells that start to stress the dog out, which causes the undesirable behavior to escalate. And, we talk about those unmet needs. If they're not getting enough physical or mental exercise, and the two are very different for Labradors, they have to go and create their own fun. So we need to make sure we're meeting their needs at all times. We could get a dog that's had too much fun and excitement, and we really start to overload their senses. And if they suddenly feel like they can't cope with all of this new exciting information we've provided to them, they might lose their mind and start doing undesirable behaviors. And I suppose the best way I could talk about sensory overload is imagine that you're blowing up a balloon. You keep blowing air into that balloon, and every bit of air is like a bit of information that we feed to our dogs. At some point, you won't be able to put any more air in that balloon because it's going to pop. And that's a little bit like sensory overload for a dog. We keep feeding it little bits of information, a little experience or something new or something different or something stressful. It's like a constant adding of information into their brain. And at some point, it's going to react just like a balloon. It can't take any more and it has to get rid of stuff. And that's usually when we see a dog lose its mind because it's saying, I can't cope. We've given it too much and we get that sensory overload. Your dog also may be doing things that are undesirable because of what they've experienced before, chewing up a house. Again, that's what I started talking about. So I'll carry on about that. It might be a traumatic response to something that's happened in that particular room or that particular house, or in a particular situation where maybe they were left alone or even with a certain person or thing. They might take that and think, actually, this is likely to be a traumatic experience for me because that one time something bad happened, that's what they're remembering. So again, if they're already getting stressed out because of that past traumatic experience, chewing might be something they do just to relieve that past trauma or that past experience. And finally, I got on my list, undesirable behaviours can stem just because a dog is trying to tell us something. They don't want to behave badly on purpose. There's no incentive for them to do that. They don't want to annoy us because actually we provide them everything they ever need. They want to please. Most dogs would absolutely do anything for you and they don't want to annoy you. So think about what your dog is doing, but why? Please don't think your dog is doing it to annoy you. They're probably trying to communicate something with you, that they need something, that something is bad, something needs to change. And that's where it becomes challenging because you need to really understand your dog to figure out what that might be. You know your dog better than anyone else, so you'll be able to pick up on lots of little signs that they give you. But I guess my plea and the reason for this podcast is not always to go to bits of equipment to solve your problem. It rarely works. And in fact, it can compound that problem and in the long run make it much, much worse. In the example of wearing a muzzle for a dog that's just doing normal puppy behaviour, do we think that dog learns not to chew the sofa? Or do they just learn that they can't chew the sofa when this horrible muzzle is round their nose and they can't physically open their mouth? Do they learn that being alone and behaving is comfortable, nice and pleasurable and they want to do it again? Or do they learn that being in that living room, in that home environment with those people is actually pretty horrible because they can't do what they naturally need to do? They can't drink, they can't pant, they can't play with their toys. It's not a fun life for a puppy that unfortunately is muzzled all the time with the wrong type of muzzle. And again, I do just want to put the caveat on it. I've not got a downer on muzzles, not at all. In fact, I've had dogs previously that have had to wear muzzles when they take a trip to the vet for various reasons. Muzzles are good. Everyone should muzzle train their dog, so their dog is happy to wear a muzzle if and when they need to. But my point is, it shouldn't be seen as a tool to stop undesirable behaviour. And muzzles really, I would say, if you're going to use one, need to be in conjunction with a really good, solid training plan. And also make sure you're using the correct type of muzzle, because there's many out there, some better than others for different situations. If your dog needs to be in a muzzle for a longer period of time, basket muzzles every step of the way so they can still display those natural behaviours that they need to. So I did say that it might be me rambling a little bit, and hopefully I've conveyed to you my thoughts on this, but particularly why I've decided to do this podcast, because actually it's a real plea for people. Don't use bits of kit to solve your problem. Get to the root cause of what is causing that problem and help your dog overcome it. There's so many ways to do that. There's lots of resources out there and trainers. Training is not something that you just do for a couple of weeks when your dog's a puppy. It's a lifelong commitment to your dog. And I know actually if you're listening to this, you've probably already signed up to that theory already. don't struggle in silence. If there's anything dog related that you need help with, I'm certainly here to help you. And I know there's hundreds of thousands of dog trainers out there. You'll be able to get help from many different sources, but I think the key is reach out to someone that you trust and that you know has your dog's best interest at heart and that can help you. So definitely don't struggle alone. If you're struggling to understand what your dog is trying to communicate with you, again, let somebody step in to help you. Again, the offer of help from me still stands there. Reach out to me and we can help you with that. If you've got a puppy that's chewing and biting and nipping and you're literally pulling your hair out thinking, crikey, when will this stop? How do I resolve this issue? Have I got an awkward dog? I've got a free training program. You're more than welcome to access it. And it's just a guide of how to deal with puppy nipping, biting and chewing. So any listeners to my podcast, I'm going to give you free access to that. Just drop me a message. hello@talesofsuccess.com. So TAILS of success.com. hello@talesofsuccess.com. I'll send you the link. You can register for that training. There is no cost involved to you at all. And it will, well, I'm confident it will help you. If you have friends, family, if you're in a Facebook group where you've seen these particular comments about muzzles, we're all about educating. We're not here to say you're doing things wrong, because genuinely people want to do best by their dog. So if you do know of anyone that is thinking about muzzle training or having particular challenges, help them, educate them, guide them, even point them in the direction of this podcast. I don't mind, but be kind. People want to do the best by their dog. So be the person that's going to help them. Thank you from me once again. I'm going to leave you and I'll catch you on the next episode. If you do find value in these podcasts, my rambling thoughts, I'd really, really appreciate it if you could just let me know that it's beneficial. You can do that by leaving a review on the podcast wherever you get your download from, your app store. Or actually, if you just want to pop me an email, do so. Just tell me that you enjoy it, that you don't enjoy it, whatever your feedback might be. It helps me improve it for the next one that we do. So I'd love to hear your feedback on it all. Thanks for joining us. We hope that has been useful to you. But from me, all I want to finish off by saying is be caring, be consistent, and be your Labrador's best teacher. I'll catch you on the next episode.